Gary, how did you find carnivore?
Well, it was a long search, but actually it started 2 years ago. Should have started 70 years ago, but it started 2 years ago. Uh, I was always the fat guy, and as I got into my teens, when I had a little money to work with, I started buying more junk and junk. But I always thought pretty good shape. Never had to go to the doctors. But anyway, let's fast forward to 2 years ago when I ended up in Vancouver Hospital after having a heart attack or with congestive heart failure. No pain, just trouble breathing and hacking up pink phlegm. And then within 2 days down there, I was told that I had a real high sugar reading. Then they started pumping me full of insulin, diabetes for life, insulin for life. Then they did a dye test, and I had blocked arteries. And then they said, we're going to have to do a quadruple bypass. Then I went in for an MRI, and they discovered there that I had a aneurysm on the back of my heart, about quarter as big as my heart. And that made me feel real good when the surgeon was standing there telling me what they'd found. And he said, I'm sorry, Mr. Crest. If that popped right now, there's nothing I could do to save you. So then they booked me for surgery, and eventually I got into surgery. And all of this time, I'm blaming myself, and there's nobody to blame. I knew I was eating too much, and we all tend to not take responsibility until it could be too late. So I had a little bit of an inkling how somebody must feel on death row, because when they brought my last supper in, I thought this could be my last supper. And anyway, went in the next day. Remember going on the operating table, my arm being strapped down, and then I was gone. And when I woke up, I know I had a grin on my face, because man, was I happy. Spent 2 or 3 days in there, got back to my room, and that's just, that's where they started working with me. Now, the doctor that did my surgery and the team, I got to say, he saved my bloody life. There's no denying it. He was good at what he did. And the nurses, there's nothing bad about nurses. They just work their butts off and look after you the best they can. And anyway, the day that they were in, and I also ended up having and I don't know why really they put it in, because the surgeon said I'd like to put a device in you because of your heart defibrillation. Well, I never had a problem before, but he said the team doesn't think you need one. But he said, I'd like to see you get one. Well, here I am laying there about 3/4 out of it, and well, go ahead and do it. So they put that in, and they got me a flight to fly
So,
me home.
sorry, this was a pacemaker.
Pacemaker and defibrillator. And they said you'll know when that defibrillator goes off, because like somebody kicked you in the chest like you never felt before. And it's right there. Anyway, I remember him standing at the foot of my bed when they moved me out of ICU. And this is what started me, Dave. His words were, I said, I thanked him for what he did. And I said, I'm going to say something that I'm sure everybody in my position has told you. And I said, I'm going to start looking after myself and I'm going to take care of my health. Yeah, he said, I've heard that before. But I meant it. I said, I've ate lots of beef, and I have. I grew up on a farm in Nova Scotia. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had lots to eat. Home cooked food. And he said, yes, Mr. Kress. But he said, be careful. Don't overdo it on the red meat. And he said, don't, he said, if you eat meat, eat very little fat. He said, try to stick to skinless chicken. Now, we've all heard this all of my bloody life. And he said, if your wife uses some salt to cook with, that's fine, but don't ever put it on your table. So the medication they had me on, Dave, was just, I think they had me on 10, 12 different medications, and they were changing them so fast that I couldn't even keep track. And I remember one day they come in and I don't know what they gave me, but I was standing there and I looked and all I could see is a big black wall with pink spots floating around in it. And it scared the heck out of me. And my legs were swelled up like balloons. My toes were sticking out of a balloon. And they also had me very concerned about my kidneys were shutting down. My liver was giving them problems. And I never had any of that stuff before that I knew of. So then they did send me home. And I told my wife when I got home, I said, well, I guess that's it for Tim Hortons. No more French vanilla cappuccinos and no more apple fritters, which I dearly love, which I knew I take responsibility for. And right from that day, Dave, I wait. September the 11th, I got it home, or 10th, I got out of the hospital. September 11th, I weighed 255 pounds. My morning sugar was 9.1, but my blood pressure was 120 over 65 over 84, which I thought wasn't bad. And I wasn't home a week, and I got switched from the hospital medication, handed over to Providence Cardiac Clinic in Vancouver. So they started phoning, started changing drugs. Well, who are you to argue? And that's when
Were they giving you any reasons for changing the drugs, or they were just saying, "I'll take this
no,
one
no,
instead"?
they don't want to talk to you. They just say we're faxing in this to your pharmacy, and we, you know what? They're using you for a bloody guinea pig. I'm pretty sure. Because here you are, 74 years old, on, well, not on death's doorstep, but he's lived his life, so let's try this out. Also, they're building a brand new hospital down there, and I think that might influence them with the drug companies a little bit. But I took it upon myself. I started looking at all my medications that they had me on, started Googling everything. They had me on medications that were interacting with one another, and liver damage and kidney damage and everything. And the first doctor, you probably never heard of him, but the first doctor that I actually listened to on YouTube was Dr. Shanil Dan. He works in the States. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, I've had him on my channel. Yeah.
Okay, and what I liked about him is he's very critical of doctors, very critical of the medical system and how it operates. So I, I got really involved then in looking after my meds, and they had me on like a very high dose of atorvastatin. And Dave, I couldn't walk across the room. I was like a drunk man. And I don't know if I've ever been that drunk, but in pain and had to use a walker. And I remember coming in the kitchen here, and I went and I got something, and I couldn't think what I was going to do with it. I looked at my wife, and she's there staring at me because here I am, like somebody with dementia. I didn't know what I was there for, and there was different times when I would leave the burner on the stove, and just in a dumb, bloody way. But all the time, I was controlling my sugar intake and not overeating, and started losing some weight. And by this time, I think I was cutting back on some meds. Now they say consult with your physician. Well, what a waste of time that is. There, why would I ask him if it's all right to stop taking this pill? You know what the answer is? Oh, you find this little strong, we'll weaken it, we'll give you a lower dose, but you can't stop it. So my mind was made up that when I seen him, he was going to understand where I'm coming from. I never got sarcastic with him, but he knew when I left that I was taking control of my own health. I needed him to write a prescription or two if I needed them, and to set up blood work when I needed it. And he's pretty good. He sits there with a grin and he says, "Well, you know your body better than I do." And he didn't really argue. He just said, "Well, I don't know." Well, it don't matter what you know. But anyway, Dave, to shorten the story up and make it rush along, January the 11th, I was down to
Sorry,
200.
sorry, just to clarify, January 11th, what year? 23?
24 then. Yeah,
24. Thank you.
I was down to 221 pounds. My sugar was 4.9. My blood pressure was 105 over 64/67. Now, those are pretty good numbers. So, the endocrinologist I had in Vancouver, he stopped the insulin and switched me over to 500 milligrams of metformin, which I appreciated because I didn't like the injections. So then I kept going on. And in the meantime, I was cutting out medications, my atorvastatin, because that just aches and pains. And every time I stopped these meds, I could feel a difference in my body. I started walking better. My mind, I wasn't, I wasn't in a stupor. Like I just felt good, better, not good, but I felt better. And swelling was pretty well gone, or I thought it was. And then they put me on Intestral for blood pressure. Now, my blood pressure, it was perfect.
Yeah,
But,
why did they need to put you on that?
well, they phoned up and they said, we have blood pressure we want to put you on. I'll tell you how smart they are. They said, it's $10 a pill and you need 2 a day. Well, I said, I'm not paying that because my blood pressure's fine. But we want you, it's good for your heart, relax your arteries and veins, and it makes your heart easy. And we've already checked, and your provincial health care will pay for it. So they started me on a low dose. And 24 mils, 26 mils. Now, I can't pronounce the 2 drugs that's in it. But then 2 weeks, we want you to get blood work done. And then we're going to increase your dose. So, got my blood work done. And it's funny, I didn't think of it at the time, but the technician said, what are they seeing if they're screwing up your liver or not? And so then they sent me the next dose and go over to the drugstore and get them. And like a little puppy, come home and start taking them. And man, I'd get up and I'd stagger. I'd have to hold on something. And this went on for 3 weeks, and they phoned up. Oh, we want to put you on the strongest dose now. Well, why? At that time, that's about time I stopped metformin, and I got more figures here. This was March the
So you
23rd.
you just took yourself off metformin?
Oh, you have to take yourself off everything because nobody's going to do it for you. Even the druggist argues with you, but he's nothing. There, you know, I live in a small town and we have drug dealers that aren't licensed, but we have 3 over here at the clinic and 1 in the drugstore that are licensed. That's my view on it. They're legal. But anyway, March the 23rd, I weighed 215. My blood sugar was still 4.9. And my blood pressure that morning, I took my blood pressure every day for pretty near 2 years, and my weight and my sugar faithfully. And my blood pressure was 96 over 59 over 61. And that's when they wanted me to go to the strongest dose. And I told the girl, I don't know if this was a doctor or a nurse or a secretary. But I said, no. I said, I'm dizzy. I'm lightheaded. I'm having to hold on stuff. And, well, she said, well, wait a week. But we'll send a prescription. So then I started taking them. And I told my wife, I said, phone the clinic. So I phoned the clinic, or my wife did. I got a hold of them. And I said, those pills are too strong. I'm going to go back to the medium dose. And she said, well, you can't. Well, I said, I can, and I am. I told her what my blood pressure was. She said, I'm not concerned about your blood pressure being low. And that's exactly what she said. And I said, well, I certainly am concerned. And she said, well, that's fine then. We're going to release you from the clinic. And I said, that's good. Because I didn't need their damn clinic anyway.
So they fired you because you didn't want to take the dose that they ordered.
Exactly. That's what it boiled down to. Because, like I said, they're building a big hospital. And then this Dr. Ovidia, I had seen some of his videos, and he got talking. He had a video one time on intestinal. Now, if you Googled it, it was a wonder drug. But Ovidia said he questioned that because I forget, Navarre's or one it was the name of the company, a Swedish company, I think, that come up with this drug. They're the ones that did the test. It was such an amazing results that they canceled the test and put it into production.
That's like all of them. They got to cancel the test as soon as they get a good result because they can't risk a bad result if they keep it
Yeah.
going.
And all the time, I'm just losing more and more and more confidence. And I cut back and I told my doctor over here, I said, I'm going to go back to the light dose. And he said, he knew where I stood. So he said, yeah, okay. I said, but I've got some of these higher dose ones, medium dose, so I'm going to cut them in two. Oh, yeah, well. But if you look on Google, no, metformin or intestro, you cannot cut them in two because you may not get the perfect split. So I went down to the drugstore because I wanted a few more. They wouldn't touch them. They wouldn't cut them. No, you can't do that. So I started cutting my own and didn't have any problems. I was feeling better all the time. And August the 15th, 24, I stopped my intestro. And then I weighed 198.2 pounds. My blood sugar was 4.7. My blood pressure that day was 91 over 58.64. So, what I had started out to do, I had lowered my blood pressure to what I thought was well, some people say it was too low, and it was being with drugs, bringing it down, forcing it down. And I said to the nurse in Vancouver, that or doctor, whoever I was talking to, I said, I've lost all of this weight. Now, from what I understand, every 10 pounds I lose, my blood pressure is going to come down a bit. Was that not calculated in? Oh, they didn't want to hear about that. No, no, no. So then my endocrinologist, who I thought was a good guy, he's the one that switched me in onto metformin. I had an appointment set up with him, phone conference. And he asked me how I was making out. I said, good. I said, I don't take metformin anymore. You don't? I said, no. Your doctor stopped you? No, I stopped it. Told him what my blood sugar was. I said, don't take any blood pressure medication anymore. He said, what's your blood pressure? I told him. He said, what do you do? I said, well, I changed my diet. I said, I discovered that what you guys have been talking about, red meat and animal fats, were what we should have been eating instead of these bloody seed oil fats. Well, he got kind of a little touchy then because you're questioning him. And he said, where'd you hear this? I said, on YouTube. I said, I actually, and when you see like Ovidia, Chaffee, Barry, some of these doctors uh, Hampton and them, when they go on there and they actually stand in front of a camera and they got balls enough to stand there and actually apologize for what they've been telling people. You got to give somebody like that credit. And his reaction when I told him that, he said, "Well, all they're doing is trying to sell a book." And my reaction was, "What are you trying to do?" And you know, like he said, "Well, you've got," and I said I wasn't taking the atorvastatin anymore. I said, "I'm not going to take statin." "Oh, you got to take a statin, especially now you're eating this bloody animal fat." He said, "High cholesterol." He said, "Your cholesterol is just going to skyrocket." I said, "Well, you know, from what I understand, that's probably not a bad thing." He said, "But you just had heart surgery." I said, "Yeah, well, that's up to me, isn't it?" So we had a little bit of a run in, and he basically told me he was through, and I thought that was a great idea too. So I kept,
So that's now fired by two doctors.
yeah, yeah. Plus, where we live here, we have a clinic 10 minutes from here. We have a hospital 45 minutes from here. But to get to the bigger centers where you got your specialists, it's a 3 hour drive in either direction. And I was not going to do that for a 15-minute interview. And something else, Dave, I missed, I forgot to tell you. After my surgery, my injection fraction was around 40. And this September the 11th, when I went, I had to go to a local hospital and have an echocardiogram, I guess it's called. My injection fraction was normal. So,
Wow. So that would have been above about 55 or something.
yeah. So
Oh,
So they were all happy about that, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they were sad because things were getting better. Kind of makes you feel that way, doesn't it? If you start getting
right.
better. Yeah. They weren't
Yeah.
happy.
So, no, if you're not reliant on the system, they're not going to be happy with that.
Yeah. Now I had reached my goals as far as all of this stuff. But by then I was watching this guy doing interviews and he was pretty laid back. He asked some intelligent questions and he had good guests. And I guess that was probably you, Dave. And so my wife and I were watching and we were starting to pay attention because I didn't understand what insulin resistance would do to you, could do to the body. And all the time, I'm still cutting back on bread, on no more sweets, no more bread, cutting back on stuff. So everything was good, but by May the 23rd of this year, 05, or 25, my mind was made up that I'm going to go basically carnivore because I love meat. I always ate lots of meat, but up till then, I'd been eating some veggies. At that time, I had a greenhouse. I had tomato plants in the greenhouse. I had my garden ready to plant. And I love pickles. I used to eat between a quarter of a cup and a half a cup of bread and butter pickles a day. We made them. But then you get thinking, God, how much sugar's in them. So my wife, she said, well, now we're not going to eat that stuff, but don't plant it. So I put grass seed in my garden, tore the greenhouse down. And I was still watching what I was eating. But boy, and I didn't ask my wife to join me, but am I ever glad she did, because it makes life so much easier. And she gave truckloads of food away, stuff, cooking stuff she had. But we both went basically carnivore. Now, when I say carnivore, I kind of call it more of an animal base way of eating. The only thing that we eat that doesn't come from something like, I think you said something with the brain, was we both drink some coffee. And, you know, other than that, there's not a whole lot. We don't eat no fruit, none whatsoever. We don't eat any vegetables, none whatsoever. And and we just kept eating this way. And you know, that's when things really start showing up. Because get to my wife now, 30 some years ago, she was diagnosed in Nova Scotia with carpal tunnel. She needed carpal tunnel surgery, which she never bothered getting. So then when we moved out to BC, about 8 years ago, or 9, she went over to her doctor, and her doctor said her hand used to shake. She got so she used to hate signing Christmas cards or signing her name or anything, or handling the mouse. She had to get rid of her computer because she couldn't control the mouse. So she went to the doctor 3 hours away. He said she didn't have carpal tunnel. He said she inherited this shaking disorder from her father. And, and also her head used to, she'd always sat holding on her chin, keep her head from vibrating. But Dave, it, after we gave up the vegetables and basically just started the animal base, you know, I looked at her one day and I said, you know, your head doesn't vibrate anymore. You're not sweating. Now she enjoys writing. She does puzzles all the time. So it was just food related. Also, 3, 4 years ago, they wanted to book her for knee surgery for osteoarthritis in her knee. She had 2 or 3 cortisone shots. And she was walking with a cane. She's got a little hitch in her get along, but now she doesn't use a cane. And a year ago, I didn't want to walk in like -30 here in the winter, -40 some days. We're not going to walk in the winter outside. So we bought a treadmill, and I was working out on a treadmill every day. And my wife said she wished she could, but there's no way she'll ever be able to walk on that. Well, guess what, Dave? This morning we got up at 5 o'clock, and my wife went in there on a treadmill and she did 15 minutes straight. And she come out and she made some coffee. We didn't drink it. And by that time, I was ready to go for my walk outside. So I went outside and she did another 20 minutes on the treadmill. Like she's been doing probably an hour a day or hour and a half now for quite a few months. And she also dropped some weight. And she also had fibromyalgia, I guess, like bad pain in her back. She had some other back trouble, and that's progressively getting better. She doesn't have the pain that she used to. And so it's just wonderful for her. And with me, I had arthritis starting in on my knee. That doesn't bother me now. I had spot breakout on my face about 3 years ago, like a big mole. And I still got a little one on my nose, but had one there, another one started here. And you know what you think when you start seeing that stuff, what it could be. But I never bothered getting it checked. And then when I was in Vancouver, after I had my surgery, nurse took me in to give me a shower. She said, "You've got a couple moles on your back here." I said, "Yeah, I know." She said, "Just keep an eye on them. See what happens with them." I said, "Yeah." So anyway, come home, and that's what we've been doing. We've been eating a pretty, not 100%, but a pretty clean carnivore diet. And and things have been going good for us. And I noticed my wife the other morning or afternoon saying they're rubbing her shoulder. I said, "What are you doing?" Well, she said, "A few years ago I had a mole cut off my shoulder." But she said it grew back some because they wanted to do a biopsy on it. It wasn't cancer, but it did grow back some. She said that's gone. And I looked, and there was a little white spot there. Well, now a week later, that little white spot's pretty well faded out. This thing on my face completely disappeared. The one on my nose is pretty well done. I had my wife look at my back this morning. Those moles are getting very light colored, so they're disappearing. And and I don't know if it would make any difference, but my wife's 81 years old and she smoked most of her life. And here, 2 or 3 weeks ago, she said, "I'm giving up smoking." So she went down and she got the patch and she wore them for a week and she was getting lightheaded. So she threw them away and she went down and she got a lighter patch, which she's never put on. So she's basically cold turkey now. Now, would this
Wow.
would this help her give up smoking, like the craving? She said she has no craving.
It's I think for me, one of the things about eating this way is always self-control gets much better.
Yeah,
So
I
it
have to
it could
agree.
be it could be about it could be something like that, you know? It's,
But
it's great when you get the sugar out of your system. It's amazing what happens.
yeah, yeah. I can't believe it. Like I said, I had swelling where I didn't think I had swelling. Like the shoes I got on right now, where I bought them 2 or 3 years ago, and they were tight, and now they're too big for me. And my feet, I thought were normal then, but I don't think I had that much fat in my feet that I lost. But I don't know. But this this last time I weighed myself and did my blood work was just a couple days ago, 3 days ago, the 12th. My blood pressure was 101, 61, 61. My weight was 170.6. Now I've been down to 165, but when I lost all that weight and not exercising, I also lost a lot of muscle. And I know I got flab, Dave. I got flab I look like an old Brahma bull. I got flab hanging everywhere, and I really don't give a darn. But my wife told me that before, like 3, 4 years ago, I was over 300 pounds at one time, about 315 before I, 3, 4 years ago or more. But before I went to the hospital, I was wearing a size 50 pant, blue jean. And she looked today on the tag. These are 32s. So
Wow. And how tall are you?
I'm only 5'9.5".
So when
So
you were
that's
around
what.
300, that would have been really uncomfortable.
Yeah, but I didn't. I've been big on my life, so I didn't really feel it. It's not like I had put it all on. Like I always thought I was like a well trained athlete. They weight lift. Well, I carried weight at 24 hours a day. But this spring I built a patio deck out here, and the blocks I put under it were 65 pounds. And my wife said, "Can you handle them?" Yeah, they were heavy. But Dave, stop and think about it. I had two of them strapped on me all the time for years. Like, God, things. And I know you hear a lot of stuff about doctors and food pyramid and all of this stuff. But we have to be responsible. I knew that I was overweight, and I knew I had a pretty good idea why, and most people do. And as far as a joining a diet, no, I didn't really need to because I just started cutting out foods. And what I would do, I love potatoes, but then we'd have supper. In a couple of hours, I'd take my blood sugar, and it would be up 9. And then before that, it was down to 5. So, and I felt kind of guilty telling my wife, "Well, I'm not eating any more potatoes. I'm not eating any more of this or any more of that." But that's what you have to do. You you have to convince yourself, and it's worked so good for us. And like I said, when we made the commitment to go carnivore, it it wasn't what I started out to do because I had accomplished that. I had got off my meds. I had my weight where I maybe not light enough, but I'm satisfied with it. I can't ever remember my life being this light. I presume I was one time, but you know, but after watching the testimony from people with you, and we all know people that's got Parkinson, we all know people's got cancer, we all know people that's got sugar resistant. But I have an opinion now that a heck of a lot of these people could reverse that or at least stabilize it with nothing other than a change in diet. Now, you don't have, I'm not saying that you have to go hardcore one way or the other, but boy, anybody with half a brain knows that sugar is not good for you. But the vegetables, that's a different thing. That took some convincing because I grew up eating vegetables. We always had bananas on the table. We always had grapes on the table. We always had oranges or apple on the table. And we always had nuts because nuts are good for you, aren't they? And the trouble is, I couldn't walk past them. I'd almost look for an excuse to go out in the kitchen so I could grab a handful of something. through YouTube, you learn that this stuff, what it's actually doing to you. And we also found out after we went carnivore, because man, the oxalates we had in us. Oh, we got the rash, we got the joints, my eyes were sore. We went through that. So, and that's just telling your body is just dumping stuff. Like, but no,
Right.
it's been
So
wonderful.
how are you both eating now day to day? Like, are you having 2 meals a day or
We we both eat 2 meals, but in a very short period. Like we get up, like I said, at 5. We both do our walks. Well, 4:30. We're always out here at 5. We both do our walks. Uh, we'll have a cup of coffee or two, like after 7 o'clock. Anytime after 8. And I, growing up on a farm, breakfast was a big deal. So in the morning, we each have 3 or 4 scrambled eggs, and I eat I eat a lot of brisket. I love cold meat, so I always got a piece of brisket in the fridge, and I'll have some cold brisket with my eggs. And wife, she'll eat some bacon with it, or if she has some leftover meat. And then I like to be done my feed period, I call it. If like yesterday, I ate at 8:30. Started eating at 8:30 in the morning. I was done before 12 noon or 9, and then at 11:30, I was having lunch, which consisted of probably a pound of hamburger, close to it. And my feeding period, or our feeding period, is pretty much between 8 o'clock and 12. And we don't, like, I won't eat a thing. I was done a little before 12 today, and I won't eat anything until 8:30 tomorrow morning. So I'm really not I I'm really not interested in seeing how long a fast I can do, because I'm really not interested in it, because I'd like to eat. And I never went on I was never into diets, but yeah, sometimes New Year's resolution, I'm going to cut back. So I'd cut back until 2 days. I'd be hungry, and then hell with this. And but this just kind of blows my mind, because my wife and I, we both eat, and we eat until we're comfortably full, and we just don't get hungry anymore. And like I've heard you say, and I've heard your guests say, when you do get hungry, it's not a craving. It's not something that's just tearing at you. No, your body's telling you it's time to eat. Now, we used to eat a lot of chicken. Of course, we ate healthy. We ate skinless chicken breast. But now we don't. There's something about chicken that just, I can't even chew it now. I used to eat a lot of pork. I can still eat the odd pork chop, but no more pork roast. It just doesn't work for me. Once in a while, we used to have some bologna. We fried up some bologna here not too long ago, and it really upset both of us. So your body is, and this is something new too, your body is telling you what it wants and what it doesn't want. Like here, we got friends here that do some ocean fishing. They give us some halibut and some lingcod. What's any better than halibut? And the last halibut we ate, we were glad when it was gone because we'd lost our taste for it. Like, I can't explain it. Like, I really can't explain what changes, but your taste changes or your body rejects, is trying to tell you, I don't want this stuff in me. Like, because the guy who gave us the halibut, he said they don't eat much of it because halibut is a long-lived fish and it can be high in mercury. Well, who knows? I don't know. I can't explain this stuff, but all I know is what your body tells you, and you got to listen to it. And I wish I'd started this years ago, but we
Yeah.
didn't start
I
it.
yeah, it's amazing when you're eating this way, you've cut out so many things, you can actually listen to your body. But, before, you were eating so many things that were bad for your body, like, that you can't listen to any signals because you don't know there are any signals there, right?
You know, like here,
Mhm.
I was in Vancouver, and 10 doctors running in every day telling me how sick I was with diabetes, and gave me a pile of books like this on literature on diabetic diet and literature on congestive heart failure diet. You know what they were, North American Food Guide. And for breakfast, they bring me in oatmeal, toast, some margarine, some peanut butter, some jam. But God help you if you ask for bacon and eggs. You can't have that because that's too high in cholesterol. And
Yeah. As a carnivore, listening to that they're bringing in oatmeal and toast and peanut butter and jam, and it feels like they're actually trying to kill their patients.
uh, uh, I honestly believe, and maybe I'm exaggerating, I'm just going by the way I felt and the way my body was reacting, that if I had just taken what they told me to take, that I probably would have ended up with kidney failure and severe liver damage. As simple as that, even with my sugar being corrected to a certain point, but the medication alone is killing a lot of people. Like like Dave, if I was a doctor and I believed in what I was taught, which we'll say is a lie now, but if somebody come to me and they had diabetes and I put them on metformin, and 2 years later they were still coming back to me and I was still giving them more metformin, would you not ask yourself, why aren't they getting better? Because I sure as
Yeah,
heck would.
and at some point, I would be questioning myself and saying, I've spent all this money on my education. I studied for years. I have to do continuing education. And basically, I treat every patient by going off a checklist saying, do you have this? Yes. Do you have that? No. Okay, here's the prescription. Like, I would feel bad about myself because I'd studied so hard just to be an order taker. I
Yeah,
could I could get a job at McDonald's and never have to study.
I know. And like a large animal vet, when I was farming, if I had a sick cow, the vet come to the cow, I'd say, you can either decide what's wrong with her and treat it, or I'll take her and have her butchered. That way I can't afford to lose the money. but I don't want to drag her up in the bush either. But vets did not, when the vet treated large animals, they treated them to make them better because the farmer didn't want to be treating, you couldn't treat a cow for a year and not save her milk. Like, she's invaluable. Like, you just can't do that. But then when it comes to small animals, now we got them as sick as humans, sugar, diabetes, kidney trouble, heart failure. And the vets just love that because they're pumping them full of bloody pills now and selling them dog food. Like, I told my wife, like, when you walk into the drugstore, I don't know what the drugstores are like in Japan, but here you walk in our local drugstore, the first thing you come to is treats, candy, pop, different juices, stuff like that. Then you go a ways, and then you're into the drugs the cold remedies and all of these softer drugs. And then you look down the back where the pharmacy is, and they've got a wall down there just plugged full of prescriptions, waiting for people to pick them up. And some of these,
It's almost like they've set a trap.
well, no, no, seriously, somebody's damn smart that set that up. And the trouble is, we're stupid enough as humans to fall for it. And that comes right back to, you got to be responsible. You got to take responsibility. Don't look for somebody else, or don't blame somebody else for your stupidity. And that's all it is for most of us.
Mm.
It's just, we're just being stupid. Like, I walk downtown. It's just a small town, 3,000, 3,100 people. And there's a half a dozen people riding around in wheelchairs with a missing leg or a missing foot. But they got the joystick in one hand and a Tim Hortons mug or a bottle of pop in the other hand. Like, I've got a neighbor here. A year ago now, had his leg amputated. They started with the toe, then the foot, and then halfway to the knee, and then the knee, and now above the knee. I go over and I visit him, and he always criticizing the doctor and stuff. Why he lost his leg. I said, well, you're going to lose the other one someday. Well, I hope not. Well, I said, that's up to you, isn't it? I said, what do you eat for breakfast? Oh, I have a coffee and a blueberry muffin or something. And he also, while he's telling me this, he's having a beer and and a cigarette, and he also has some heart trouble. So there's nothing you can do for people like I don't. I just get along with him because it's no good to get after him because he ain't going to listen. We have a lady next door that's 70 on metformin. Oh, I wish I could give metformin up. Well, you can. And well, I wish I could. Well, you can. Just change your bloody eating habit. Give up sugar.
I think that's one of the saddest things, like the medical profession have trained us, and Big Pharma have trained us into this sense of helplessness.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I wish I could get off this. Well, you can, but as you said before, you've got to do it for yourself. You can't rely on a doctor to do it because that's not what they're trained to do. They're not trained to get you off the meds.
But my wife and I are both sick because when we moved in this town, now my wife was never heavy. She had a few extra pounds on her, but she wasn't heavy. Now, most people remember me as being 300 pounds. And our son and his wife and daughter came here this summer to visit. And their first reaction is, oh my God, you fellers are thin. And especially Betty, because Betty's only 5 feet tall. She weighs 106 pounds. but she can outdo most people half her age. She's sort of a hyper ambitious type person. And saying, like he looks at me, he said, God, he said, you're thin. He said, you're feeling good, feel better than I can remember feeling. And I'm not bold. That's not a word of lie. I do feel good. And we have people here in town, they only remember us being the way we were. And I'm guilty of this too. And most of us are, because I've seen people and you don't see them for a few months and they lose weight and you think, God, they must have cancer or they must be sick. They're losing weight. And we get that a lot. Betty's sister, she told her sister in Ontario, whose grandson is a neurosurgeon. And Betty told her that we were basically carnivore. Well, what's that? Betty told her. Well, I'm going to Google that. I'm going to research it. Well, Betty said it'll take you a while. Took us a year and a half, going on 2 years. Next morning, she found out. She said, I researched that diet you're on. Betty, you're going to die because you can't live on that diet. Betty said, where'd you hear that? I got it from the association. Now, when she said association, you know what association that was. It was North American Heart. And Betty said, no, we're fine. She said, we watch a lot of YouTube and a lot of them are doctors. Well, I don't know what kind of doctors they are because her grandson, she likes to bring up he's a neurosurgeon. And he has studied nutrition for 25 years. Now, Dave, that's not happening.
There's no neurosurgeons studying studying
No,
nutrition for 25 years. Based on the experience that you and your wife have had, if one of your friends did come to you and say they were willing to try carnivore, what advice would you give them for getting started?
I would have to say, ask them what their reason was, how committed they are. And my wife and I, we just started it very slow. We cut out sugar, then we cut out carbs. And we didn't even know it. We didn't realize it, Dave, but we were going more carnivore and didn't even realize it. So we didn't have the flu because we were, yeah. But sadly to say, we have friends here that if you told them that, well, I was talking to a guy the other day. He's got eczema or asthma real bad. He's on puffer. Doctor wants to put him on a statin. Uh, his sugar is going up. I said, well, if you haven't got sugar now, you will in 5 years' time and put you on a statin. I said, just change your diet. Well, I'm not giving up the pleasures of life. Well, so give up your life because we've had people here 22 years old drop dead with a heart attack because they're overweight. That that's sad. That is sad because I'm living proof. My wife is living proof. You've had people on this living proof that this is all due to diet. But the one thing that I got to say before we go is we can't live without plants because we got to have plants for those damn cattle and sheep and stuff to eat so we can eat the sheep and cattle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so Gary, if people want to reach out to you, do you have any social media or any way of getting
Now,
in contact?
just my email, and if anybody wanted to talk, I'd gladly talk to them. Other than I do a lot of research, and I'll continue doing research. And my wife and I will never leave the food program we're on. And she eats ice cream every day. but it's heavy cream, egg yolks, and a little flavoring, coffee, instant coffee flavoring. Because she's not as big a eater as me, and she needs that cup of heavy cream every day that she gets out of the ice cream. I think just to give her more fat because she doesn't gain a pound. Like she's leveled out excellent. Now we're happy, and as long as I can get up from the table being full, I'm happy. Yeah,
Nice. So Gary, I'll link to your email in the show notes.
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your wife's story. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and keep the good work up. And you have no idea what an influence you were on our lives.